Nothing dramatic happened that day. No breaking news, no layoffs announced on TV, no stock market crash. It was just another normal morning. David stood in line for coffee, scrolling through his phone. Prices were higher again. Rent was due in a week. His salary hadn't changed. He felt something strange, not panic, but pressure. A quiet, constant pressure, like running on a treadmill that was slowly speeding up without anyone telling you. That's when it hit him. Life wasn't falling apart, but it was getting harder, without explanation. And millions of people around the world were feeling the exact same thing. David did what he was told would lead to a good life. He studied. He showed up early. He stayed late. He avoided unnecessary risks. For years this worked, but recently something felt off. Every raise was swallowed by inflation. Every bonus disappeared into higher living costs. Saving money felt responsible, yet pointless. David wasn't alone. Across the world, workers were earning more on paper, but less in reality. Families were downsizing quietly. Young professionals delayed life milestones, not by choice, but by math. The system hadn't collapsed. It had simply stopped rewarding effort the way it used to. And no one explained that part. At work, the language began to change. Management stopped talking about growth. They talked about efficiency, optimization, automation, words that sound harmless until people start disappearing from meetings. David watched colleagues leave. Good people, skilled people, replaceable people. Not because they failed, but because the company found a cheaper way. That's when David understood something unsettling. In the modern global economy, being good at your job is no longer enough. Stability no longer comes from loyalty. It comes from leverage, and most people have none. One night, David sat alone in his apartment. No phone, no noise. Just a simple question echoing in his head. If my income stopped tomorrow, how long would my life stay the same? Not how long he could survive, but how long before stress took over. A month? 2? 3? The answer made his chest feel tight. That was the moment David realized. The economy doesn't destroy people suddenly. It exposes them slowly. First through prices, then through uncertainty. Finally through dependence. As David started paying attention, patterns emerged. This wasn't just happening to him. In the US, people relied on credit to maintain normal life. In Europe, energy costs reshaped daily decisions. In Asia, salaries struggled to keep pace with housing and education. Different countries, same pressure. The global economy wasn't broken, it was filtering. Filtering out those who had only one income source, owned no assets, relied entirely on wages, and quietly favoring those who owned skills that traveled, built income beyond time, positioned themselves early. This wasn't unfair, it was structural. For the first time, David stopped blaming himself. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't irresponsible. He wasn't behind because he lacked discipline. He was behind because the rules changed and no one announced it. The biggest mistake ordinary workers make is thinking their struggle is personal. It's not. It's systemic. And once David understood that, something powerful happened. Fear turned into clarity. Because if the problem isn't personal, then the solution doesn't start with working harder. It starts with working differently. And that realization is where real adaptation begins. Today, David still wakes up early. But something is different. The anxiety is lower. The future feels negotiable. Not because the world became safer, but because he became less dependent on one system. Right now, millions of people are standing exactly where David once stood, doing everything right. But inside a game that has changed. The question isn't whether the economy will keep shifting, it's whether you'll notice. Before you're forced to. Subscribe if you want to understand how ordinary people quietly adapt and win in a changing world. David soon realized his story wasn't unique. Across the world, people were experiencing the same pressure. In the US, households were using credit cards just to keep up. In Europe, energy costs reshaped daily life. In Asia, young professionals worked longer hours for shrinking margins. Everywhere, inflation quietly rewrote personal budgets. The headlines talked about GDP, interest rates, and markets. But real life was happening in kitchens, buses, and late-night phone screens. The truth was simple. The global economy had become less forgiving to people with only one source of income. David didn't lose his job, but he understood something more dangerous than unemployment. Dependence, one paycheck, one employer, one schedule he didn't control. In a fragile economy, that's not stability, that's exposure. For ordinary salary earners, the first survival move isn't quitting work. It's asking, if this income slows down, what breaks first? Rent? Food? Family responsibilities? Clarity comes before action. You can't protect what you haven't measured. David looked honestly at his skills. They worked well inside his company, but outside? They didn't travel far. The global economy now rewards skills that are transferable across industries, useful in multiple markets, valuable online, not just in one building. That's why ordinary workers must invest in skills like communication, problem solving, digital literacy, financial understanding, using AI as a tool, not fearing it, not to become influencers, not to get rich fast, but to stay relevant when conditions change. David grew up hearing, "Save your money and you'll be safe." But inflation changed the math. Money sitting still was quietly losing power. Globally, this forced a new mindset. Saving is for safety. Investing is for survival. Learning is for leverage. This doesn't mean reckless risk. It means understanding basics, how money loses value, how assets protect purchasing power, how long-term thinking beats panic decisions. In hard economies, ignorance becomes expensive. David stopped asking, "How do I work harder?" and started asking, "How does money flow in this system?" He noticed patterns. Platforms scale faster than people. Ownership beats effort. Distribution matters more than perfection. Ordinary workers don't need to beat the system. They need to position inside it. Small ownership, small experiments, small risks consistently applied. That's how resilience is built quietly. If you're watching this after work, tired, concerned, wondering how long things will stay this way, you're not failing. You're adapting late, and that's still okay. The global economy isn't collapsing. It's filtering. Those who rely only on wages will feel more pressure. Those who build flexibility will breathe easier. The question isn't, will things get easier? It's, will you become stronger inside harder conditions? David didn't become rich overnight, but he became prepared. And in this economy, prepared people sleep better than hopeful ones. One day, without warning, you realize something has changed. Not the headlines, not the markets, you. You notice how fragile a single paycheck feels. How quickly prices rise while certainty disappears. And for the first time, you stop asking the wrong question. Not, why is the economy so hard? But, why did I believe it would stay easy? The global economy is not broken. It's doing exactly what systems do, rewarding those who adapt and pressuring those who stand still. This is not about fear. It's about clarity. You don't need to panic. You don't need to gamble. You don't need to become someone else, but you do need to wake up. Because the most dangerous place today is not unemployment. It's comfort inside a system that no longer protects you. Right now, there is a quiet divide forming. On one side, people waiting for stability to return. On the other, people building resilience while things are still uncertain. Years from now, both groups will look back at this moment. One will say, "I didn't think it would get this hard." The other will say, "I'm glad I started when it was uncomfortable." The economy will keep changing. That part is guaranteed. What isn't guaranteed is whether you'll change with it. And that decision, the quiet one you make after this video ends, will shape your future more than any headline ever could. If this message made you pause, that's your signal. Not to rush, not to escape, but to begin, deliberately. Because in times like these, those who wake up early don't just survive. They decide where they stand.